Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're taking a look at everyday conversations. You know, those little chats we have all the time. We've got a bunch of snippets from Jake and Sarah talking about, well, pretty much everything. Morning greetings, weekend plans, you name it. The real question is, what can these ordinary exchanges actually tell us about how we communicate?
That's what's so cool about language, right? Like, even a simple "how are you" can reveal a lot about relationships and social dynamics. We might not even realize it, but we're constantly sending and receiving these subtle signals.
Okay, so let's jump right in. It's Monday morning, and Jake and Sarah bump into each other. They start with that classic, "Good morning, how are you?" But Sarah mentions she's tired. Now, are they actually expecting a detailed explanation of her sleep schedule, or is there something else going on?
Well, let's be honest, most of the time that "how are you" isn't a real question. It's more like what we call phatic communication. It's less about exchanging information and more about making a connection. Kind of like a verbal handshake, right?
Yeah, makes total sense. But then they go straight into talking about the secret life of pets, which I thought was interesting.
It is, because it suggests they have this shared cultural reference point. It makes you wonder, do we naturally gravitate towards people who get our pop culture references?
Oh, 100%. I know I do. Then, like clockwork, they start chatting about the weather. Seriously, 90% of my conversations seem to start this way. Is there like a psychological reason we're so obsessed with talking about the weather?
There might be. I mean, everyone experiences the weather, right? So it's like this safe, neutral topic. Plus, we tend to like people who are similar to us. So agreeing about the sunshine or complaining about the rain, it kind of creates this "we're in this together" feeling.
It's those little things, huh? So we've got these subtle social cues flying back and forth. Then the scene changes to a bookstore. Sarah asks Jake for directions. Pretty straightforward. But what happens next is what I find really intriguing.
Yeah, that's where it goes from purely transactional to something a little more personal. Suddenly, they're connecting over their shared love of books.
And not just any book, Sherlock Holmes. It's a classic. It's like they're instantly on the same page intellectually.
Shared interests are powerful. They open up all these possibilities for future conversations, maybe even a little bit of, hey, we could be friends, you know?
Totally. And speaking of shared interests, the conversation naturally blows into hobbies. Sarah loves to paint. Jake plays guitar. It's almost like they're subtly showcasing their talents and passions, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Hobby talk is kind of like a form of self-promotion, right? It's a way to hint at your personality, what you value, what you're good at. It's like a low-key personal ad without being, you know, a personal ad.
Right. They're revealing more of themselves as they go. Then we see them at school, and the dynamic shifts a bit. Jake is helping Sarah with math homework. It's got that tutor-student vibe, but there's also this sense of mutual respect. What did you pick up on here?
I noticed how they exchanged compliments, like, you're good at math, you're good at literature. It suggests they both have their strengths, almost like they're figuring out how they complement each other. Not just academically, but maybe, you know, on a deeper level, too.
That's a really good point. And then it leads right into the cafe scene where everything feels much more relaxed. They're deciding what to eat, making decisions together. Seems like they've moved past that initial getting to know you stage.
Definitely. There's a comfort level there now that we didn't see before. Makes you wonder if all those little moments of connection, the shared interests, the compliments, the easy banter, have kind of paved the way for something more.
Okay, so now it's the weekend, and Jake suggests going to an amusement park, and not just with Sarah. He wants to go with a group of friends. What do you think about this shift from one-on-one to a group setting?
It feels like it's about, like, expanding the social circle. Amusement parks are all about fun, excitement, shared experiences. It's almost like saying, hey, I like hanging out with you one-on-one, but I'm also curious to see how you interact with my friends and vice versa.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then just when you think they've covered all the bases, they discover yet another thing in common. They're both animal lovers. Seriously, it's like something out of a rom-com. But why is it that we as humans love to bond over our furry friends?
Well, pets are a great conversation starter, right? I mean, who doesn't love talking about their furry companions? It lets us show our softer side, our playful side. Plus, it creates instant common ground, especially if you both have a goofy golden retriever or like a super mischievous cat.
Right, it's like pets give us permission to be a little more vulnerable, a little more ourselves. So as we wrap up part one of this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that even the most ordinary conversation can be surprisingly revealing. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much to unpack as we delve deeper into the nuances of Jake and Sarah's interaction. But before we jump into part two, I want to leave our listeners with a question. What surprised you the most about this seemingly simple exchange? All right. Even a simple "see you later" can tell you a lot about where a conversation is headed.
Yeah, and in their case, it feels like more than just a goodbye, almost like a promise.
Totally. It's that acknowledgement that, hey, we had a good time and I'm looking forward to more. There's so much packed into that little "see you later," isn't there?
Right, like so much unsaid but still understood. It makes you think about how you end your own conversations.
It really does. Are you closing the door or are you leaving it open, for more to come?
That's a great point. I'm definitely going to be more aware of that now. But okay, big picture for a second. We've gone through all these individual moments, but what about the whole conversation? What are the big takeaways? What's the overall message here?
Well, one thing that really sticks out is how even these totally normal conversations are filled with social cues.
Like we're always sending messages, even when we don't realize it.
Exactly. And the more we understand those messages, the better we can navigate all these social situations. It's like having a superpower, You pick up on those subtle cues, you anticipate how people might react, and then bam, stronger connections.
So how do we crack the code? How do we become more fluent in the language of social interaction?
Awareness is key. Pay attention to what people say, yeah, but also how they say it, right? Their tone, their body language, even those tiny pauses, it's all part of the message.
So it's kind of like being a conversational detective, looking for those clues that tell you what's really going on.
Precisely. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. It's like learning any new language. It might feel tough at first, but then it becomes like second nature.
And it's kind of amazing to think that something as simple as a conversation can be so complex.
Right? It's like every interaction is a little drama unfolding, all those twists and turns and character development and things left unsaid.
And as we've learned from Jake and Sarah, the good stuff, the interesting stuff often happens between the lines.
It really does. It's those glances, those pauses, those words carefully chosen. That's where the real story is. But, we spent all this time with Jake and Sarah, but the real learning comes when we turn that focus inward, right?
Exactly. It's easy to analyze someone else, but looking at your own communication, that takes guts.
Totally. It takes self-awareness. You got to ask yourself, what messages am I sending? How are my words, my actions impacting others?
It's a challenge, for sure, but also empowering. Because once you're aware of those habits, you can actually choose how you communicate.
Exactly. You become the author of your own social script. Choose to be more assertive, more empathetic, more engaging. Whatever feels right, whatever aligns with who you want to be.
It's like we all have these incredible communication tools, but so many of us don't even know how to use them, right?
That's a great way to put it. And the more you use them, the more you realize how much power you have. You can build stronger relationships, figure out how to resolve conflict, create a more positive environment for yourself, for everyone around you.
It's almost inspiring when you think about it, right? Like the power of communication, to connect on a deeper level, to build understanding, to actually make the world a better place.
It really is. And, we focused on Jake and Sarah's conversation, but all this applies to everything, right? From a quick chat with someone at the coffee shop to a deep conversation with someone you love. Every interaction is a chance to learn, to grow, to connect.
So as we go into the final part of this deep dive, I think we should all carry that with us, that sense of wonder and possibility. Because the world of communication, it's huge, it's endlessly fascinating, and every conversation is an invitation to explore it a little bit deeper. So we've spent a lot of time with this conversation between Jake and Sarah, and it's crazy how much we can learn from something that seems, totally normal.
I know, right? We talked about how those first hellos and good mornings, they're not just about being polite, they're about showing you're open to connecting.
And all those shared interests, those books, hobbies, even pets, they're not just random things to talk about.
No, they're like little glimpses into who we are, what we care about. They're chances to find common ground, which we know is so important for building relationships.
Right. It's like that feeling of hey, me too. Like when you discover you both love the same band or whatever.
Exactly. It's that me too that really brings people together. Even something as simple as talking about the weather can do that.
Yeah, it's like subtly reinforcing that we're similar. We're both experiencing the same world.
It's pretty wild how our brains are wired to look for similarities, even in the most everyday things. It makes you think maybe that's why we're drawn to people who agree with us, even about, what kind of pizza toppings are the best.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of showing who we are, we talked about how hobbies and activities can almost be a way of subtly promoting yourself.
Yeah. Like, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I love.
Exactly. And it's not just bragging, right? It's more about sharing something about yourself and seeing if the other person connects with it.
It all goes back to those Me Too moments. That's where connection happens. And even those little rituals at the end of a conversation, like the see you laters and making plans for next time.
They're not just an afterthought either, are they?
Definitely not. It's like they're sealing the deal and setting the stage for what comes next. Makes you realize that every part of a conversation matters, even the way it ends.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are you taking away from all this? Have you ever really thought about how much meaning is packed into those everyday conversations we have?
I hope this has made you curious to pay attention to your own conversations. What are the patterns? What can you learn about yourself and others through something as simple as talking?
Because as we've seen, even the most ordinary conversation can be surprisingly insightful. And it's a good reminder that we're all connected through this invisible web of language. And every time we talk to someone, it's a chance to strengthen those connections, to learn something new, and to grow.
So go out there, have those conversations, and really listen. You might be surprised by what you discovered, not just about other people, but about yourself, too.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive. Until next time, happy chatting, everyone.